The Mediterranean sun cast long shadows across the waters off Sidi Barrani on the 25th of November 1941. 3 British battleships, Queen Elizabeth, Valiant, and Barham, steamed in formation with their destroyer escorts, hunting for Italian convoys. At 4:25 p.m., Destiny struck from beneath the waves. 3 torpedoes from the German submarine. U-331 slammed into HMS Barham's port side in such rapid succession, they threw up a single massive column of water. 4 minutes later, a catastrophic magazine explosion tore the mighty battleship apart. The blast, captured on film by cameraman John Turner aboard HMS Valiant, showed Barham capsizing to port before disappearing in a towering mushroom cloud of black smoke. 862 men perished in those terrible minutes, nearly 2/3 of her crew. The loss of HMS Barham marked not just the end of a ship, but the culmination of a remarkable 26-year career that spanned 2 world wars and witnessed the transformation of naval warfare itself. HMS Barham represented the pinnacle of British naval engineering when she was laid down at John Brown and Company's Clydebank shipyard on the 24th of February 1913. As the 4th ship of the revolutionary Queen Elizabeth class, she embodied the Royal Navy's response to the growing German naval threat. These super dreadnoughts were designed to combine unprecedented firepower with speed, creating a fast squadron capable of defeating any enemy battleship. At 643 feet, 9 inches in length, and displacing 32,590 tons, Barham mounted 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets, weapons that could hurl a 1-ton shell over 20 miles. Her Brown Curtis steam turbines, fed by 24 Yarrow boilers, generated 75,000 shaft horsepower, propelling this floating fortress at speeds up to 25 knots. Named after Admiral Charles Middleton, 1st Baron Barham, who had served as First Lord of the Admiralty during Nelson's victory at Trafalgar, the ship carried a proud legacy from her launching on December 31, 1914. Commissioned on the 19th of October, 1915, at a cost of £2,470,113, she immediately joined the Grand Fleet's 5th Battle Squadron at Scapa-Flow. Her early months saw intensive training as the Royal Navy prepared for the decisive fleet action that strategists believed would determine the war at sea. That clash came on the 31st of May, 1916, at Jutland, where Barham served as flagship for Rear Admiral Hugh Evan Thomas. Despite firing 337 15-inch shells during the battle, the results proved inconclusive. Though Barham herself survived with relatively minor damage, 6 hits that killed 25 men and wounded 37 others. The interwar years transformed Barham from a cutting-edge dreadnought into a modernized veteran. Between 1931 and 1934, she underwent extensive reconstruction at Portsmouth. This rebuild added anti-torpedo bulges that widened her beam to 104 feet, strengthened her deck armor against aerial bombs, and modernized her secondary armament with improved anti-aircraft guns. Her distinctive 2 funnels were trunked into 1, giving her the characteristic profile she would carry into the Second World War. The reconstruction reduced her speed to 22.5 knots, but significantly improved her protection against the new threats emerging in naval warfare, submarines, and aircraft. During the 1,920 seconds and 1,930 seconds, she served with the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and home fleets, showing the flag across the empire and participating in suppressing the 1929 Palestine riots and the 1936 to 1939 Arab Revolt. When war clouds gathered again in 1939, HMS Barham stood ready in the Mediterranean, a 24-year-old warrior modernized for a new conflict. Her crew of over 1,100 officers and men represented the accumulated experience of the Royal Navy and professional sailors who understood their ship's capabilities and limitations. The ship's fire control systems, featuring sophisticated rangefinders and plotting equipment, could direct her main batteries with deadly accuracy. Her armor scheme, though designed primarily against shell fire, had been adapted to face aerial attack. Multiple anti-aircraft guns sprouted from her superstructure, including the newly installed pom-pom mounts that would prove vital in the Mediterranean's aircraft-dominated battles. As September 1939 arrived, Barham prepared to write new chapters in her storied history, unaware that the nature of naval warfare had fundamentally changed since her Jutland days. The Second World War began for HMS Barham in familiar waters, the Mediterranean Sea, where she had spent much of the interwar period. When Britain declared war on the 3rd of September 1939, Barham was stationed at Alexandria as part of the Mediterranean Fleet under Admiral Andrew Cunningham. The initial months involved convoy, protection, and patrols, maintaining British naval supremacy in waters that would soon become among the most contested of the war. In December 1939, the Admiralty ordered Barham home to strengthen the home fleet against the threat of German surface raiders breaking into the Atlantic. This voyage would bring the first taste of the new war's dangers. On the 12th of December 1939, tragedy struck during Barham's homeward journey. In the darkness and heavy weather off the Scottish coast, she collided with one of her escorting destroyers, HMS Duchess. The destroyer, caught in the battleship's path during a nighttime maneuvering exercise, was literally cut in half by Barham's massive bulk. Duchess sank within minutes, taking 124 men to their deaths. The accident deeply affected Barham's crew, a grim reminder that danger came not only from enemy action, but from the hazards of operating powerful warships in wartime conditions. The incident required an inquiry and cast a shadow over what should have been a routine transfer between theaters. Fate struck again just 16 days later. On the 28th of December 1939, while patrolling off the Butt of Lewis with the battlecruiser Repulse and several destroyers, Barham crossed paths with U-30, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp, the same officer who had sunk the passenger liner Athenia on war's first day. Lemp fired a spread of 4 torpedoes at the British capital ships. One found its mark, striking Barham on her port side, adjacent to the shell rooms for her forward turrets. The explosion destroyed the anti-torpedo bulge in that area, killed 4 men, and caused severe flooding. Barham took on a 7-degree list that her crew countered by transferring fuel oil to starboard. Initially reduced to 10 knots, she managed to increase speed to 16 knots and limped into Liverpool for repairs. The damage kept her in Camelaird's Birkenhead Yard until the 30th of June 1940, 6 months out of action, during a critical period of the war. While under repair, Barham received important upgrades to her anti-aircraft defenses. Additional pom-pom mounts and machine guns were installed, along with the new unrotated projectile rocket launcher system, an early attempt at improving defense against dive bombers. When she finally emerged from the shipyard in July 1940, France had fallen, Italy had entered the war, and the strategic situation had completely transformed. After working up at Scapa Flow through July and August, conducting gunnery exercises and training her partially new crew, Barham received orders for Operation Menace, the attempted seizure of Dakar in French West Africa. This operation would test whether Vichy French forces would resist the British or join the Free French cause. The Battle of Dakar, fought between September 23 to 25, 1940, proved a harsh lesson in the complexities of warfare against former allies. Barham, now flagship of Vice Admiral John Cunningham, commanding Force M, faced the modern French battleship Richelieu and powerful shore batteries. On the morning of September 25, Richelieu opened fire at 24,000 yards. As British battleships maneuvered into position, the submarine Beauvaisis launched 4 torpedoes. Barham successfully dodged them, but her sister ship, Resolution, took a torpedo hit that caused severe listing. Barham returned fire, scoring 1 hit on Richelieu with a 15-inch shell that devastated a mess deck and dented the armored deck, though causing no casualties. Throughout the engagement, Barham received 5 hits from French shells, 1 during the morning action and 4 in the afternoon. The damage, though not severe, combined with Resolution's torpedoing to convince British commanders to abandon the operation. Barham had to tow the damaged Resolution to Freetown for emergency repairs before escorting a convoy to Gibraltar in October, where her own battle damage was repaired. The failure at Dakar marked a turning point in Barham's war. In November 1940, she received orders to join the Mediterranean fleet permanently, where the war against Italy was intensifying. The Mediterranean would become her final theater of operations, a sea where British naval supremacy faced challenges from Italian surface forces, German U-boats, and above all, the Luftwaffe's growing presence. As she passed through Gibraltar's narrow strait, Barham entered waters where traditional battleship tactics would be tested against modern threats. Her arrival at Alexandria on the 14th of November 1940 came just days after the Fleet Air Arm's spectacular raid on Taranto had crippled 3 Italian battleships in harbor. The nature of naval warfare was changing, but Barham and her crew would adapt, serving as the backbone of British naval power in the Mediterranean through the challenging year ahead. The Mediterranean Sea in late 1940 had become a crucial battleground where control of the sea lanes determined the fate of armies fighting in North Africa. HMS Barham's arrival reinforced Admiral Cunningham's battle fleet at a critical moment. The Taranto raid had shifted the naval balance, but the Italian fleet remained a potent threat, while German aircraft increasingly appeared over Mediterranean waters. Barham's first major operation came with Operation Collar in late November, covering convoys from Gibraltar while the carrier Eagle struck at Tripoli. These complex naval movements characterized Mediterranean warfare, you comprend. Every convoy required massive naval support against threats from surface ships, submarines, and aircraft. December 1940 brought Barham into direct action, supporting the Western Desert Forces offensive against Italian positions in Libya. On the 3rd of January 1941, alongside Warspite and Valiant, she bombarded Bardia, her 15-inch shells pulverizing Italian defensive positions before British and Australian troops stormed the fortress. The bombardment demonstrated the psychological and material impact of naval gunfire support. Each 15-inch shell weighed nearly a ton and created craters 30 feet across. Throughout early 1941, Barham continued supporting military operations along the North African coast, while protecting the vital convoys that sustained Malta, the unsinkable aircraft carrier blocking Axis supply routes to Africa. The Battle of Cape Matapan on March 27-29, 1941, proved to be Barham's most significant fleet action of the war. When intelligence revealed an Italian sortie aimed at intercepting British convoys to Greece, Cunningham sortied with his battle fleet to intercept. On the night of March 28, Barham joined Warspite and Valiant in a devastating ambush of Italian cruisers. Using radar and searchlights to achieve complete surprise, the 3 battleships opened fire at point-blank range, just 3,800 yards. The Italian heavy cruiser Zara was torn apart by concentrated 15-inch salvos, her main turrets blown dozens of meters into the air. Fiume suffered the same fate, while the destroyer Vittorio Alfieri was obliterated. Barham's guns contributed to the destruction that saw 3 Italian heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers sunk with 2,400 sailors lost, against British losses of just 1 aircraft. The victory effectively ended Italian attempts to challenge British control of the Eastern Mediterranean with surface forces. April 1941 saw the strategic situation deteriorate as German forces invaded Greece and Yugoslavia. The Africa Corps under Rommel had also arrived in Libya, reversing British gains. On April 21, Barham participated in the controversial bombardment of Tripoli, an operation Cunningham opposed as too risky but undertook rather than sea. Barham used as a block ship. At 5 a.m., the 3 Queen Elizabeth-class battleships opened fire on the port, achieving complete surprise. Barham's shells destroyed warehouses, fuel dumps, and shipping before the squadron withdrew unscathed. Yet such successes couldn't stem the tide of Axis victories on land. The evacuation of Crete in May 1941 became Barham's most perilous operation yet. With the Luftwaffe controlling the skies from captured Greek airfields, the Mediterranean fleet faced relentless air attacks while evacuating Commonwealth forces from the besieged island. On May 27, while covering the evacuation, Barham came under concentrated attack by Junkers Jew 88 seconds and Heinkel Hay 111 seconds. A 550-pound bomb struck Y turret, starting a serious fire that took 20 minutes to control. Near misses ruptured her port side bulge over an area 20 by 16 feet, causing flooding and a list. 5 men died, 6 were wounded. The damage forced her withdrawal to Alexandria and ultimately to South Africa for repairs, as no adequate facilities existed in Egypt. The Crete operation starkly demonstrated how air power had revolutionized naval warfare. The Mediterranean fleet lost 3 cruisers and 6 destroyers sunk, with 2 battleships, 6 cruisers, and 7 destroyers damaged, all to air attack. Barham's survival owed much to her upgraded anti-aircraft defenses and the skill of her gunners, who claimed several aircraft destroyed. Yet the battle proved that even the most powerful battleships were vulnerable without air cover. As Barham departed for Durban via the Suez Canal in June 1941, her crew knew they had witnessed a fundamental shift in naval warfare. The 6 weeks of repairs in South Africa's modern facilities restored Barham's fighting capability. But when she returned to Alexandria on the 15th of August, 1941, the Mediterranean had become even more dangerous. German U-boats had arrived in force. The Luftwaffe dominated the skies, and Malta teetered on the edge of starvation. The stage was set for the final act of Barham's long career. HMS Barham returned from South Africa to find the Mediterranean fleet stretched to its limits. Malta was under siege, consuming convoys faster than they could be delivered. Rommel's Afrika Korps had pushed British forces back into Egypt, making Alexandria itself vulnerable. The Luftwaffe and Regia Aeronautica dominated the skies, while German U-boats had established a deadly presence in waters the Royal Navy once controlled. Despite these challenges, Barham resumed her role as a cornerstone of British naval power. Her battle-scarred hull and experienced crew representing decades of Royal Navy tradition and expertise. September and October 1000, 941 saw Barham engaged in the grinding routine of convoy protection and fleet operations. Each sortie from Alexandria required careful planning, aerial reconnaissance, destroyer screens, and coordinated movements with the RAF's limited fighter cover. The battleship's anti-aircraft guns were in constant action, her crews becoming expert at the deadly ballet of tracking and engaging attacking aircraft. The pom-pom guns, with their distinctive sound, created a barrier of explosive shells, while lighter weapons engaged dive bombers that pressed their attacks to point-blank range. During one convoy operation to Malta in September, Barham's gunners claimed 3 aircraft destroyed and 2 probables, though the strain of constant action was telling on both men and machinery. The Italian Navy, though bloodied at Matapan, remained a fleet and being that required constant vigilance. Intelligence reports suggested new German pressure on the Italians to act more aggressively, possibly with direct German support. The British, reading Italian naval codes through ultra-intelligence, usually had advance warning of enemy sorties. But the combination of surface, submarine, and air threats made every operation hazardous. Barham participated in several sweeps attempting to intercept Italian convoys to Libya, operations that required precise timing to avoid being caught by air attack at dawn. These missions, though often fruitless, were essential to maintaining pressure on Axis supply lines. November 1941 brought Operation Crusader, the British offensive aimed at relieving Tobruk and pushing Rommel back. The Mediterranean fleet's role was crucial, preventing Italian convoys from reinforcing the Afrika Korps while protecting British supply routes. On November 24, Barham sortied from Alexandria as flagship of the 1st Battle Squadron under Vice Admiral H.D. Pridham Whipple. The force included her sisters, Queen Elizabeth and Valiant, screened by 8 destroyers. Their mission: cover the 7th and 15th Cruiser Squadrons hunting for Italian convoys in the central Mediterranean. The battleships would provide distant support, their heavy guns a deterrent to any Italian surface intervention. The weather on November 24 was clear, with good visibility, ideal conditions for spotting periscopes, but also perfect for enemy reconnaissance aircraft. Italian and German planes shadowed the British force throughout the day, radioing position reports that helped U-boats position themselves for intercept. Among these submarines was U-331, commanded by Oberleutnant zur See Hans Dietrich von Tiesenhausen, a 28-year-old officer on his third war patrol. Tiesenhausen had positioned his boat along the likely route of British forces operating from Alexandria, maintaining silent running to avoid detection by ASDIC. As November 25 dawned, the British squadron continued its patrol pattern, zigzagging at moderate speed to complicate submarine attacks while maintaining formation. The destroyer's screen operated at maximum ASDIC efficiency, but the numerous false contacts from marine life and temperature layers in the Mediterranean made positive identification difficult. At approximately 4 p.m., U-331's hydrophone operator detected the distinctive sound of heavy machinery, multiple large ships approaching. Tiesenhausen ordered his crew to battle stations and brought U-331 to periscope depth. Through his attack periscope, he identified 3 battleships in line-ahead formation, with destroyers weaving protective patterns around them. The geometry of the attack was nearly perfect. The leading battleship Queen Elizabeth had already passed U-331's position. Barham, second in line, was approaching at an ideal angle for torpedo attack. The range was incredibly close, just 375 meters, practically point blank for torpedo warfare. At 4:25 p.m., Tiesenhausen ordered all 4 bow tubes fired in a spread pattern. The submarine's periscope was spotted by the destroyer Jervis at 4:18 p.m., but the contact was dismissed as too large to be a submarine, a fatal misidentification. There was no time for evasive action. Barham had just begun a routine turn when 3 of the 4 torpedoes struck her port side between the funnel and X turret. So close together, they created a single massive water column that towered above her bridge. The 4th torpedo passed ahead, missing by mere feet. The final day in legacy, the 3 torpedo impacts delivered a mortal blow to HMS Barham. The explosions tore massive holes in her port side, destroying the anti-torpedo bulges that were meant to protect against such attacks. Water flooded in at an incredible rate, immediately giving the ship a heavy list to port. Captain Geoffrey Cook ordered counter-flooding to correct the list, but the damage was too severe and developing too quickly. Within 60 seconds, Barham was listing 20 degrees and increasing. The order to abandon ship came as the list passed 40 degrees, but for many below decks, it was already too late. As Barham continued rolling to port, her massive turrets broke free from their barbettes, crashing through the capsizing hull with thunderous impacts. Men scrambled up the increasingly vertical deck, some sliding down the exposed hull bottom as the ship turned turtle. 4 minutes after the torpedo hits, catastrophe struck. The flash from burning cordite reached the main 15-inch magazines. The explosion that followed was captured on film by Gaumont News cameraman John Turner aboard HMS Valiant, one of the most dramatic and horrifying sequences ever recorded in naval warfare. A colossal blast tore Barham apart, sending a mushroom cloud of smoke and debris hundreds of feet into the air. The concussion was felt throughout the fleet, and burning debris rained down over a half-mile radius. The human cost was staggering. Of approximately 1,184 officers and men aboard, 862 perished, including Captain Cook and Vice Admiral Pridham Whipple's flag captain. Many were trapped below decks when the ship capsized, others were killed in the magazine explosion, and some who escaped the sinking ship were pulled under by the suction or killed by underwater explosions. The survivors, coated in oil and many badly burned, struggled in the water as destroyers raced to their rescue. HMS Hotspur rescued 337 men, while the Australian destroyer HMAS Nizam picked up approximately 150. Among the rescued was Vice Admiral Pridham Whipple, who had managed to swim clear despite the oil and debris. The immediate aftermath revealed both heroism and controversy. Leading telegraphist A.R. Bacon had remained at his station after the first torpedo hit, transmitting warnings about U-331's presence that undoubtedly saved other ships. U-331 itself escaped Tiesenhausen's periscope briefly breaking the surface where it was unsuccessfully engaged by Valiant's pom-poms before the submarine crash dived to 265 meters, well beyond its design depth of 150 meters. The boat survived and reached port on December 3. The Admiralty's handling of the disaster proved controversial. Churchill himself ordered the loss kept secret, fearing its impact on morale when the Desert War hung in the balance. The Germans, uncertain of their success, didn't immediately publicize the sinking. The secrecy couldn't last. Hundreds of survivors had been rescued, and letters home inevitably mentioned the disaster. Most bizarrely, the sinking became entangled in one of the war's strangest episodes. In 1944, Scottish medium Helen Duncan was prosecuted under the Witchcraft Act of 1735 after claiming to have contacted the spirit of a Barham sailor at a time when the sinking was still officially secret. The case caused a sensation, with claims that Duncan had revealed classified information through supernatural means. She was imprisoned for 9 months, becoming the last person convicted under the ancient witchcraft law. Whether Duncan had genuine information or made a lucky guess remains debated. But the incident highlighted the impossibility of keeping such losses secret indefinitely. The loss of HMS Barham marked more than the death of a ship, symbolized the end of an era. She was the 4th British battleship lost in the war, following Royal Oak, Hood, and Prince of Wales. Her destruction demonstrated that even modernized battleships were desperately vulnerable to submarine attack, especially when air superiority was contested. The Mediterranean fleet, already stretched thin, could ill afford such losses, though her sisters, Queen Elizabeth and Valiant, would themselves be crippled by Italian human torpedoes just 3 weeks later in Alexandria Harbor. They at least survived to fight again. Barham's loss was permanent and irreplaceable. Yet Barham's legacy extends beyond her dramatic end. Through 26 years of service, she embodied the Royal Navy's evolution from the dreadnought era through the age of naval aviation. At Jutland, she represented British naval supremacy, built on big guns and armor. In the Mediterranean, she adapted to face threats her designers never imagined: dive bombers, torpedo planes, and submarines. Her crew, from the admirals who flew their flags from her bridge to the stokers who fed her boilers, represented the professionalism and courage that sustained British sea power through 2 world wars. The 862 men who died with her joined the long roll of those who have kept the seas for Britain. Today, HMS Barham lies in 2,800 meters of water off the Egyptian coast, a war grave protected under international law. Her wreck, discovered by underwater archaeologists, remains largely intact despite the magazine explosion, a testament to her strong construction. She serves as a memorial to all who sailed in her, and a reminder of the terrible cost of naval warfare. The film of her sinking, shown in documentaries and museums worldwide, ensures that the sacrifice of her crew is not forgotten. In the annals of naval history, HMS Barham stands as a symbol of courage, duty, and the inexorable march of military technology that rendered even the mightiest battleships vulnerable to weapons undreamed of when she first took to the seas.